Welcome back to the NESN Patriots podcast. I am Zach Cox, joined as always by Dakota Randall. We are here at Gillette Stadium. This past weekend, we were down at MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey for the Patriots' first road game of the season and their first win over the season. Patriots won 15-10 over the New York Jets. And we'll get into this game. We'll break it all down in this episode. But I wanted to start with just kind of a scene setter from our departure from MetLife Stadium the other day. We left the stadium, had to get a train to Penn Station, another train back to Boston. It was a little bit of a fire drill there, trying to get everywhere we needed to be. But as we were walking out of the stadium, as we're kind of walking through the empty concourses at MetLife, they're playing the Jets radio network, which I assume it's the Jets radio network, over the loudspeaker, over the PA. It's booming through the stadium. And as we're walking out, there is just the New Yorkiest of New York talk radio callers screaming his head off about how much he hates Zach Wilson. Literally, like, he sounded anguished and agonized. He was like, get this guy off my team. I can't believe he's here. I can't believe our team's doing this. He was just going on and on and on.
Terrible.
Yeah, it was terrible. It was terrible. And I think he summed it up nicely because Zach Wilson is a terrible quarterback. He is, despite what Robert Saleh said after the game, he is the primary reason that the Jets lost this game. You could say if they have Aaron Rodgers in there, maybe it's a different story, probably a different story. Patriots obviously would have handled things a little bit differently if it was Rodgers rather than Wilson, but I don't know. I think that's the biggest takeaway from this game. One of the Patriots' primary rivals, they just have complete incompetence at quarterback, and nothing's going to change unless they boot out Zach Wilson.
Yeah, to go back to the scene outside of the stadium that you were talking about, I mean, imagine if you're leaving a Patriots game after a bad loss when Mac Jones doesn't do well and it's playing the Sports Hub. It's whoever does the post-game show on there, and it's a caller calling in and just in the most Boston accent ever, just destroying Mac Jones. And you just hear it echoing around Patriots place.
I thought he was going to cry.
It was very over the top, but it was just like that. A guy calling in, ripping Mac Jones. But yeah, the Jets version of that. And yeah, I mean, again, I'll get to Zach Wilson in a second, but I had a thought today. Where would the Patriots be without Zach Wilson? So they have, since Tom Brady left, they have 7 wins against the Jets. And I think they're not all against Zach Wilson, but 6 of them are?
It's basically
5 of them.
Zach Wilson or Zach Wilson's backups.
Yeah. I think 5 against Zach Wilson or something. But where would they be without the Jets? They're 26-28 since Tom Brady left, but 7 of those wins are against the Jets. But yeah, I mean, I think my overriding thought leaving this game is it went exactly as we thought it would.
Yep.
It would be an ugly win for the Patriots. Ultimately, Zach Wilson wouldn't be able to get the job done. He would be terrible. He was terrible, and it was like Groundhog Day. Remember when we left MetLife Stadium last year, I was sitting on a train through New Jersey, pulling out my laptop, trying to write up a story about how Robert Saleh said he was going to stick with Zach Wilson even though nobody thought he should. And it was the same thing on Sunday. You look at that game, you're like, there's no way. He comes right out. He says, Zach's going to be our quarterback. Now, you have all these reports coming out in New York media that the Jets locker room is ready to implode, and we're doing this all over again. And deservedly so, because he is terrible. He was terrible. He looks like he should be in a Canadian Football League. I don't know if there is a better option for them out there, which is the scary part, but at the same time, you feel like they can't go on this way. It's a bad time to be a Jets fan again.
Yeah, they got Trevor Siemian to their practice squad this week. We'll see if he ends up taking over for Zach Wilson, because I don't think it's an unsustainable situation. They have too much talent on that team to be just kind of dragged down by the worst quarterback in the NFL. But this is a Patriots podcast. It's not a Jets podcast. So we're going to focus mostly on the Patriots side of this game, a game that, as you mentioned, I think played out pretty much as we were expecting. Bad weather, ugly football, good defense on both sides, offensive sloppiness on both sides, especially on the Jets side. And it seemed basically like the goal and the plan coming into this game for the Patriots was don't turn the ball over, which they have said multiple times in the days since this game. Don't allow much on the ground from the Jets, which they accomplished, and essentially dare Zach Wilson to beat them. They played a lot of this game in base defense, which they don't usually do. They really loaded up to stop that Jets running game, which they were able to successfully do. Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook, 2 talented running backs, only had 36 yards on 20 carries. And the Patriots basically went into kind of hyper-conservative bleed the clock mode, like midway through the third quarter. Almost came back and bit them in the end because the Jets were a kind of fingertip Hail Mary away from actually winning this game.
They were.
It literally tipped off of Randall Cobb's fingertips, and obviously that would have been a full-blown disaster for the Patriots. But they were able to get the win. It was another kind of, ugly, sloppy, grinded-out type game. Still a lot of questions about this team moving forward, especially on the offensive end. We're going to get to those in a little bit. But for starters, we've done this every week. 3 up, 3 down from this game. We're each going to have 3 for each category. I'll let you kick it off. Who are your 3 up for this?
Well, my 3 up, if I can find my paper, because I can't read my own handwriting. So number 1 for me, and I'll just do quick summaries of each. Number 1, Christian Barmore. I thought this was his best game of the season, one of his best games in a while. I forget what the exact snaps were, but I think he was around 46%, which the Jets didn't have a ton of offensive snaps. But I think on a percentage basis, that was
I think it was like 65%.
Oh, no, it was 46 snaps,
it was
65%.
It was the fourth highest snap rate of his career.
Yeah, his top was like 71%. So this was one of them, on a percentage basis, one of his busiest games of his career. And I thought he was excellent. I think PFF had him for like 7 or 8 quarterback pressures. He played a lot more against the run after Devon Godchaux went out, and Daniel Okwale, who now appears to be lost for maybe the whole season with a torn bicep. We've been waiting for Christian Barmore to break out this year. I don't think he was overly impressive during the summer. A little quiet to start the season, but I thought that was a huge game for him. We said last week I said that I thought for the Patriots to win this game, they had to stop the run. It was non-negotiable. They had to make the Jets one-dimensional. And that's what happened. And they made Zach Wilson beat them. He couldn't beat them, and I thought Barmore was a huge part of that. Number 2, first half, Mac Jones. I think one of the frustrating things about this game, it's kind of like the end of Burn After Reading, where I forget who, the guy asked the other character, "What did we learn?" And the guy goes, "I don't effing know." And he goes, "I don't know either." And so I don't know what I learned about the Patriots, because on the one hand, the defense
that kind of sounds like Mac Jones' career. Overall.
Yeah, the defense was really good, but it was against Zach Wilson and Mac Jones, and I think the offense, they made strides in the first half. I think they played well. Ultimately, they should have had 6 more points in this game. They should have had 21 points, maybe. And I thought they moved the ball well and did some really good things in the first half. And then the second half, it was a combination of being hyper-conservative, but also some of the issues we've seen where, we'll talk about this later, not on the same page with Juju Smith-Schuster. Some self-inflicted errors there. I don't think Mac was bad in the second half, but I certainly, I thought he was part of the problem. But first half, I thought he played really well. I thought he did a good job threading the needle of playing really safe not to turn the ball over, because that was the only way they were going to lose, but also taking some shots and making good throws when he had to make sure the Patriots actually scored points. So I liked the way he played in the first half. Number 3, tight end Pharaoh Brown, who, he had 2 catches for 71 yards. One of them was a 58-yard touchdown. Sounds like the Patriots schemed that up during the week, and they felt really confident they would hit it. They did. I think, by and large, he's been kind of exactly what you'd want from a third tight end. He's a good blocker, and if he needs to, he can go out there and make a play in the passing game. I thought it was, he scored the biggest play of the game, so he has to be in there.
Yeah, nice recommendation from Bill O'Brien too. We were talking to O'Brien, the Patriots offensive coordinator, yesterday. He coached Pharaoh Brown in Houston. He said when Brown was released by the Colts during final cuts, he and Will Long, the Patriots tight ends coach, went to Bill Belichick and said, "Hey, let's give this guy a look. I liked what I saw from him a couple years ago. I think he could fit in well." Ends up joining the practice squad, bumped up to the active roster, and as you mentioned, made the biggest play in this game. He had some surprising wheels too for a big guy, for a big tight end.
The only bummer is that it wasn't Matt Sokol. Just because Matt Sokol's been here, he's been doing the practice squad grind for 2 years. You've been wondering if he's ever going to get an actual chance to do anything. It would have been kind of fun if he's the one that got it. But
I bet we get a Matt Sokol touchdown in like week 17. It's going to happen eventually.
Yeah.
And on Barmore too, that was a performance the Patriots absolutely needed, because as you mentioned, Godchaux and Okwale both go down on back-to-back plays in the second quarter, and then Barmore played essentially every single snap for the rest of the game.
He was toast at the end. He looked like me running a 5K.
He was so tired. I mean, you could see him in the stadium. I don't know if it really came through on the broadcast, but he was gassed after some of these, especially after that longer Jets drive late in the game. But
yeah, he was on the ground after every play, and every time he took like 5 seconds to get up, and then you could see him sort of shake it off and get back in and out. But after every play, he looked toast.
Yeah, and the Patriots defensive line isn't used to playing that quite high of a workload. They like to rotate a lot, so they definitely needed that performance from him and Dietrich Wise and Lawrence Guy and a few other guys they have in there to, again, stop this Jets rushing attack. My 3 up, number 1, I'm going to go Zeke Elliott. This was easily his best game as a Patriot. He obviously had the fumble in week 1, was largely invisible in the Dolphins game, but he was really able to kind of key the Patriots' rushing attack, especially in the second half, where they essentially just gave him the ball on every other play. Finished with 80 yards, averaged 5 yards per carry. Didn't show a lot of breakaway speed or explosiveness, really, but he was able to churn through and give them some tough yards. And this is basically what you want from Ezekiel Elliott. He doesn't have to be a kind of game-breaking player for them, but he was able to kind of give them that effective rushing attack that they certainly didn't have in the first 2 weeks. Other guy, Trent Brown. Having Trent Brown back and healthy in this game, I think you saw just how important he is for this Patriots offense. Obviously missed the Dolphins game with a concussion, but came back this week, played every offensive snap. PFF had him down for 0 pressures allowed. He also made some nice blocks in the run game. I think this offensive line just looks so different when Trent Brown is in there and healthy and kind of engaged and on his game.
Yeah.
And you definitely saw the good version of Trent Brown in this game. Patriots are obviously going to need that again this week with Micah Parsons coming up.
Which I think, for whatever reason, a lot of people love to dump on Trent Brown, and I get it. You'd wonder about maybe the commitment sometimes and everything, but and the injuries. But listen, he played every game last year, and I think more often than not since he's been here, whether you're talking about 2018 or since he came back, I think he's almost been good every game. Like, very rarely do I ever go back and think, wow, he was bad that game.
Yeah.
I think, you're always kind of wondering what version you're going to get, but the answer usually is a good version.
Yeah, and he obviously got the nice little pay bump last week as well, so maybe he was feeling good after that. Definitely played well in this game. And then defensively, there's a lot of different guys you can spotlight here. Matthew Judon and Josh Uche both got after Zach Wilson a lot. I thought it was a good game from Kyle Duggar and Jabril Peppers, who have basically been by far the Patriots' top 2 safeties, which has been a little surprising through these first couple of weeks. Christian Gonzalez, another good game against Garrett Wilson. But the one guy I want to point out is Anthony Jennings, who was
especially early.
A surprisingly large contributor in this game. He was a guy who was a healthy scratch for the first 2 weeks of the season, but with the Patriots going to that kind of stop-the-run approach that I mentioned earlier, he started this game, he played a lot. He had tackles on the first 2 plays of the game, had an early tackle for loss, was in on the sack that Barmore had, blasted Zach Wilson late in the game on a red zone incompletion. For a guy that seemed to be kind of a man without a spot in this defense, for him to be able to come off the bench after 2 weeks and come in and make an impact was definitely a valuable contribution this week.
Yeah, and I think, you could argue he, sets one of the better edges on the team when he's out there. And I think that, he did that again today. This was a game where the Patriots had to stop the run. So I think it made sense to play him. I think he's a really good run defender. And yeah, it was good to see, because he's kind of a guy who, he's a high draft pick. He's been here a while.
You kind of forget about him.
You forget about him, but then, a lot of times when he goes out there and you go back and watch the game, you're like, I thought he was pretty good.
Yeah.
I thought his rookie season he had some bad games, but he's battled injuries. But yeah, when he's out there, I think he does a pretty good job. He's solid. He's not nothing spectacular, but I think he's a really solid depth player for them on the edge.
Yeah. Negative side, 3 down.
Cole Strange. He was pulled at the end of the game for the last quarter. Last quarter or so for Antonio Mafi. I know he had ice packs on both of his knees after the game.
Yes. Patriots announced during the game that he had a knee injury.
He dealt with obviously the knee injury during training camp. I don't know. That felt like a benching. I don't know. They're not. That's not any inside knowledge. That's just me looking at it thinking, or maybe it was maybe his poor play was caused by the knees, and I'm not discounting that, but I just don't think he was playing well before that. He had a bad holding penalty. He had some real issues in the run game and the pass game. I wonder if you're getting to the point now where if the Patriots are going to give themselves the best chance to win, and they have to have the best offensive line that they can, is Cole Strange a part of that right now? I don't know if you can say that. I don't know if Antonio Mafi is like an upgrade necessarily, but I don't know. It's getting to a point now where we keep saying he's got the ability, he's got all the tools you look for. It's going to click, and be it last year when he was kind of undersized, or this year was dealing with injuries, it just hasn't clicked yet. And at some point you wonder, are they going to either just sit him, which would be obviously bad for a first-round pick, or maybe they try. A lot of people coming out of college thought he was going to be a center. I don't think he looks like a tackle, but you probably would have to do that in the offseason. I wonder if we're reaching a breaking point here with Cole Strange.
It's interesting, too, because I think maybe it was because of the injury or or maybe just because there was so much uncertainty at tackle, but the sort of overall narrative throughout the summer was basically just like, all right, the Patriots are set on the 3 interior spots. As long as they get those guys healthy, as long as they're in there, like, that'll be no problem. That could even be one of the better interior trios in the AFC. And I think there's still the ceiling there for Cole Strange. Obviously, he was a first-round draft pick last year. But I would agree, so far, it doesn't look like he's taken kind of that step forward that I think the Patriots wanted him to. And again, he has dealt with a lot of injuries. He missed almost all of training camp. Got banged up in this game, seemingly. We don't know if that was an aggravation of his previous injury, a new injury, just kind of like struggles caused by that former injury. But he hasn't been healthy, so that's probably at least partially contributing to it. But yeah, I would say he's been one of the weaker points of this offensive line when everybody's healthy.
Yeah, and I would just say one more quick note. I mean, we're starting to get to the point where, at the end of last year, we all felt really good about that 2022 draft class. Well, right now, Cole Strange is borderline benchable. I mean, I don't think that's a stretch. I think he's in that area, and Tyquan Thornton is hurt again. You'd be surprised if the Patriots get anything from him when he gets back. And then Marcus Jones on IR. Didn't look great before he went on IR, and then we all know the situation with Jack Jones. And then after that, Chasen Hines got cut, Andrew Stuber got cut.
Basically everybody got cut except for Sam Roberts.
It's Sam
who
Roberts.
was a healthy scratch for the first 2 games.
So it's just, as we get deeper into it, that 2022 class isn't looking great. The other
final 2 downs,
Yeah, final 2 downs. Joe Cardona, bad snaps. I think the entire field goal operation deserves some blame, whether that be Behringer, the holder, and Ryland as the kicker. But I'm sorry, it starts with the snap. Both were high snaps. Cost the Patriots 6 points in a game that every one of those points was going to count. And the 3rd down, Bryce Behringer. I talked to Matthew Slater after the game. He said it was a really hard game to kick in. He said in all of his years going to that stadium, 16 years, whatever it's been, that was the strongest the wind was blowing. So I do want to give Behringer a little bit of a break, but a lot of those punts were line drives, not a lot of hang time. The Jets were able to get some good returns. I just thought it wasn't a great game for him.
He got a lucky bounce on one of them for sure. That looked like it was going to be caught around like the 25-yard line, ended up rolling pretty close to the goal line. I thought Chad Ryland deserves some portion of the blame for this. Obviously, he's a rookie kicker. He made 2 pretty long kicks. But the 57-yarder just didn't even come close.
Yeah, but
it was like a Rohrwasser
almost.
kick.
Yeah.
I know it's in the conditions, and it was a high snap and everything. But if the Patriots end up losing this game by 2 points, you're going to go look back at the 2 field goals that they missed and say, that's...
But you also have to go back to the 2 that they made, which were deep, which
True.
I don't know.
Again, I don't think it was a bad
them.
performance. The distance part is important with Nick Folk because he didn't really have too much of the over 50 range at this point in his career. My 3 down, number 1, Juju Smith-Schuster. This just has not worked out for him so far in this Patriots offense. This was his least productive game of the season and one of the least productive of his career. I looked back, he's played 82 games in the NFL. This was just the 4th time that he's failed to catch multiple passes. He finished with 1 catch for 5 yards, had a bad blindside block penalty, which he acknowledged was a mistake, said he was basically trying to do too much because he was watching Hines Ward highlights before the game.
That play became illegal because of Hines Ward.
It was...
So, I didn't like that answer either, but yeah.
And the 2 targets that he didn't catch were basically the same play, or the same route, at least from the opposite side of the field. It was 3rd down, 4th quarter. Mac Jones trying to go to Juju on a back shoulder, and Smith-Schuster he either didn't know it was coming or couldn't anticipate it. On one of them, he fell down. On the other, he just kind of turned the wrong way and didn't get himself in the right position. Those are the plays that you need Juju Smith-Schuster to make. Those are the plays that Jacoby Myers made for the last 3 years for the Patriots. Obviously, we've talked about it basically every week here. That's what you signed Juju Smith-Schuster to do, and the connection and the chemistry just isn't there so far with him and Mac Jones. I still go back to the quote that he had during his introductory presser with us back in April or May or whenever it was. He said he and Mac Jones never met up for those kind of individual unofficial throwing sessions that so many quarterbacks and wide receivers have around the league. So that means he never threw with Mac Jones before spring practice, and then he missed most of spring practice with an injury. So that means he really didn't have much time at all to develop that chemistry, which is so necessary, especially on plays like that where the quarterback needs to know where the wide receiver is. It's early in the season. Maybe that kind of comes with time. Maybe they eventually find themselves on the same page. but it's just been a real disappointment so far.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, you look at it and you're like, what does he do well, or what can he provide this team right now? Because he doesn't. I don't think he has the ability right now to be a factor on the outside. And if you want to kick him inside, I mean, there's kind of a logjam there for these intermediate slot receivers, whether it be Juju, what they would like Demario Douglas to be, Mike Gesicki, that's really his spot. Hunter Henry sometimes. Like, you got 4 guys kind of fighting for those for that role, and I don't, ideally you'd like Juju Smith-Schuster to be able to do that. He catches those intermediate passes and he shines in the run after the catch, which is what he's supposed to do. But I don't think he has the explosion right now to be able to do that. And then he doesn't really have what you need on the outside either. And like you said, the chemistry is just really off. It's just kind of, he's been like a zero ad so far, and that's bad. It's not good.
53 NFL wide receivers through 3 weeks have 15 or more targets. Juju Smith-Schuster is second to last in yards per catch. He has 6.6 yards per catch. He's also 7th on the Patriots in receiving yards. Yeah. Again, just has not worked out even remotely how the Patriots hope so far. Quickly through these last two, Ramondre Stevenson, I didn't think it was a bad game for him, but it was a better game for Ezekiel Elliott. Zeke had 5.0 yards per carry. Stevenson only had 3.9. I don't think there's any reason to really worry about Ramondre Stevenson. I think he's still going to be a very good and very valuable player for the Patriots moving forward. But you're still kind of waiting for that.
Had a bad drop.
Yeah, he had the bad drop on 3rd down. That's a good point.
Which I think, was that the one that preceded the 57-yard field goal?
No, his was on the
other one.
The first or second drive of the game. The Douglas penalty was right before the 57-yard field goal. Right. But again, I don't think it's anything to really worry about, but you haven't seen kind of the game-breaking ability from him so far this year. And then I honestly couldn't come up with a 3rd down, so I'm just going to go Zach Wilson. Again, not a great quarterback. Moving along, looking a little bit forward.
Second half Mac Jones, I'll do it for you.
Second half Mac Jones, there we go. All right, teamwork there. Moving forward, obviously Patriots defense has played very well for much of this season so far. Obviously not perfect, but 3 pretty strong defensive performances, especially when you look at what the Eagles and Dolphins were able to do against some other opponents. I think the offense has definitely taken strides, even in this game where they only scored 12 points. I think you saw improvement from them. I think you saw improved blocking, certainly took better care of the ball. They were very good on 3rd down in the first half, not so much in the second half, but the point stands that they've scored, 20, 17, and 12 points in their 3 games, because 3 of the points in this game
52 points.
Yeah, not great through 3 games, because 2 of the points in this game came on that Matthew Judon safety. So that obviously needs to change. You can't win many games when you only score 20 points or score in the teens. So as we look forward here, one change that the Patriots need to make offensively to get to the level where they need to be, I'll start just they need to do a better job of creating big plays, creating chunk plays, explosive plays, whatever you want to call them. Coming into week 4 here, they've only had 3 pass plays of over 20 yards. That's the fewest in the NFL. Mac Jones is 3 for 18 on deep balls, so passes that traveled more than 20 yards in the air. Only Joe Burrow has a lower completion rate on those passes. Mac Jones has also thrown the most deep balls of any quarterback. So we've heard from some players this week and some coaches. It seems like there's confidence building behind the scenes that that's going to change, that they're going to have some more success on those types of plays. But they really need to start moving the ball downfield more quickly and more efficiently, because if they're constantly relying on 8-9 play drives to score touchdowns, it's not really a sustainable strategy with how their kind of whole team is constructed.
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it. Maybe that starts with trading for Devontae Adams.
I think there's the talent. The talent deficiency is definitely an issue.
If the Raiders fall apart, I mean, I'd give them a call. I think at the end of the day, the problem is you've brought some guys here who you wanted to fill those roles. You want Devontae Parker to be that, but it's like, he looked better on these deep balls with Bailey Zappi, which was strange. Like, him and Bailey Zappi seemed to connect on some of them, and I think he had a couple with Mac too, but like you saw it again in this game. They took a deep shot to Devontae Parker, and the ball's in the air, and he looks up for it, can't find it, and kind of slowed his route. I mean, how many times have we seen the timing look off on those kind of plays? They just haven't hit on enough of these. And I think the other thing too is they try them in bizarre spots. The Douglas play that we talked about, those two to Juju Smith-Schuster, whether it be a timing thing between the quarterback and the receivers, or like the timing of the play call, or just execution. It's not been good enough to get those plays that you're talking about. And I agree. I think they need to be able to hit some of those if they are going to keep pace with some of the better offenses, because as much as I like the defense, at some point someone's going to score a lot on them, and they got to keep up.
Yeah, still, I mean, it's the stat we've been repeating for like 3 years. Mac Jones has never won a game where the opponent scores more than 25 points.
It would have been funny if that was this game. If Zach Wilson was the quarterback, and that's when they busted it.
Let's close out here. I know we're running
I'll just
short.
Real quick, my thing I was going to say for what they should change is the Juju Smith-Schuster thing. Whether it be him or somebody else, they need somebody other than Hunter Henry to be the big spot, 3rd and 6, quick hit. Someone that we trust is going to get open, intermediate, and make a play to them. It's got to be somebody else. It's not Juju right now. It's not Demario Douglas. It's not Mike Gesicki. It has to be somebody. I don't care if they find that internally or externally, but they got to find somebody to do it. It would have been Jacoby Myers. Yep. It's not. They have to figure that out.
They replaced their most valuable, or most reliable rather, receiver with a player who is currently probably their least reliable receiver, and that is just that's not a winning formula right there for sure. So closing things out here, we'll skip ahead to our final topic. Obviously, the big controversy this week is Mac Jones, Sauce Gardner, private parts, cup check, low blow, cheap shot, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I think I've written about a dozen stories about this, and I'm trying to find synonyms for it that don't go too far outside of NESN.com's editorial standards, and it's getting difficult at this point. But the point being really that this seems to happen all the time with Mac Jones. I know it happened once his rookie year with Brian Burns. It happened at least twice last season with Jaquan Brisker on the Bears, and then the low block on Eli Apple. And now it's happening again.
Funny thing is the 3 other times, or the 2 other times he's been fined, weren't even for any of those plays.
No, they were for plays that we didn't even really notice in real time. But so he's again, this seems to be a cycle of behavior for him. And then obviously when this happens, the dirty player label gets brought back up. You saw players around the league, current and former, weighing in on that. It doesn't seem like Mac Jones' reputation around the NFL is especially good. I don't know. The way that the spot that I fall in this is very similar to what Devin McCourty said on WEI this morning. He said, look, I played with Mac Jones for 2 years. I don't think he's a dirty player. I don't think he's a dirty person. But he continues to do and be around dirty stuff. Like, eventually, if you're not a quote-unquote dirty player, these things wouldn't continue to keep happening to you. So his message to Mac was essentially like, cut it out. Like, stop living on that kind of borderline where even if you didn't do anything intentional, or even if it was misconstrued or whatever, there are only so many times you can make that argument before you just have to be like, even his defenders, even the players in this locker room have to just be like, yeah, I don't know, man. He just keeps doing this. Where do you fall in this whole Mac Jones situation?
I don't know. I think 2 things can be true at the same time. One of them being, is this a big deal? In a vacuum, is it a big deal? And so I'd say, for one, if he just randomly got up, or he just that play happened, and then Sauce Gardner came over and didn't help him get up, and that was it, and Mac Jones just got up and there was no other context and just hit him in the nuts, that would be weird. That would be stupid. Not the worst offense I've seen in humankind history, but it would be weird. But I have a hard time seeing that was it. Like, part of me wondered, was it just like you saw the play earlier in the game where Sauce Gardner kind of took a swipe at him? Maybe Sauce Gardner was talking a bunch of trash. He just got slammed on that play. Sauce didn't help him get up. It might have just been a little competitive, like, hey, F you. Yeah. And I think ultimately, like, I'm like you, like, I'll defer to what the NFL players say. Like, I'm not going to come in here and say you guys are making a big deal out of something that it isn't. Like, they play the games. Yeah. If they say it is, then I'm going to side with them. And we were talking about this earlier, and not in any way, shape, or form to compare myself to NFL players, but like growing up playing sports, whether I was in high school or in men's league, like, I can be a little bit of a prick and like talk trash and kind of be chippy just because that's the way I kind of had to get myself up. And I've had a lot of times guys go up and give me a little, like, keep you honest, like, hey, shut up.
Well, hey, how are you?
Cut it out, like, and like, just to keep, let you know that they're there and, like, cut it out a little bit. And if that's all that Mac was doing, like he was kind of annoyed, like Sauce was being chippy all game, and he got up and said, "Hey, I'm here. Like that'll be enough." I don't have an issue with that. Like I don't want to be the sack tap defender, but I do think there are nuances to it because I do think stuff happens, and I do think there's a gray area where you talk to like offensive linemen or defensive linemen, and they're like, "Yeah, sometimes I'll grab them right there and give it a twist, and I'll do other weird stuff."
Some crazy stuff goes on at those piles.
And you're like, "Well, what's different? Why?" What's different about that? And if you push them on it, they'll probably be like, I don't know, just cuz.
I think, too, that this is, if this was the only kind of infraction, quote unquote, whatever you want to call it, for Mac Jones, I don't think it would be that big of a deal.
And I don't even know if Sauce Gardner would have said anything.
No, he probably wouldn't have, honestly.
He might not
I
have.
think the fact that Mac does have this reputation because of the previous things that he's been involved in or adjacent to, that heightens the kind of awareness around the league. Like we were speaking in the media room before this. I think it was Alex Barth from 98.5. He said, "Hey, remember when Cordell Patterson, when they were playing the Jets a couple years ago, just literally kind of took a fist and just smacked one of the Jets players?" It might have been Henry Anderson, actually, who went on to play for the Patriots. I can't remember who it was, but he gave just like a full fist punch to that same area. And I think it was a talking point for like 30 seconds after the game, and that was it. So it's a kind of prolonged consistency thing. When this storyline keeps coming up again and again and again about you or involving you, then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy there. It's going to continue to come up more when you do these things, and then people are going to notice it more. And
yeah, I agree. And that's what I was going to say. The two things can be true. And so the first one I kind of mentioned why I think maybe it's possible that it's not a big deal. But on the other side of the coin, at a certain point, Mac Jones has to realize, one, it doesn't matter like if you think this is BS that everyone's calling you a dirty player and that people have blown a lot of these things out of proportion, and maybe you think it's a byproduct of people hating Mac Jones for, rich kid Alabama, his whole personality. Like maybe it's an unfair bias from that, but the reality is the perception is what it is. And now whenever you do this stuff, your head coach has to answer questions about it. Your players have to answer questions about it. It turns into a distraction, and that is one of the worst things you can do in New England. And so whether or not you think it's a big deal, at some point you have to stop yourself from doing it. And on the same token, I brought up how, offensive linemen might do weird stuff in the trenches. And it's like I can be like, well, what's the difference there? Like that's a blurred line. Well, the reality is most NFL players do find that line. You find what the unwritten rules of baseball, football, basketball, hockey are. And whether they're weird or not, most people figure out what they are and they don't violate them. And the people who continually violate them, you have to go, okay, well, what's wrong with you? Yeah. Maybe this rule is stupid, but you've broken it so many times that it's going beyond us just making a big deal out of it, and it's something about you. So I think,
it's a habitual line stepper.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think on the one hand, I can find a defense for it depending on the context, but on the other side of it, it ultimately falls on him because he's got to understand it turns into a distraction and it has to stop.
And I did some quick research on that Cordell Patterson play. It was Henry Anderson, but I forgot it was not a punch, it was a full grab. And I remember CBS got a very clear replay shot.
Right, and we should also
clear
add,
and obvious evidence.
And we should also add, like, maybe Sauce Gardner is being a little soft Gardner on this, okay? Because, he said, I had to ice up, I'm not going to have kids. Like, I'm sorry, he didn't. If you get hit there, nobody just takes that and is like Dennis Drinkwater behind home plate, not moving behind a foul ball. You have a reaction. You hunch over. You're in pain, and he didn't do any of that. He just shoved him. So I'm like, I think he felt that that was what Mac was trying to do, but he didn't. It wasn't actually painful.
If you look at the tape, you look at the all 22.
It looks like
we've analyzed so much of this all 22 this week. He does kind of give the ooh as he walks away, and then his talking about it after the game, like listening to his comments, he was more just kind of bemused. He was like, yeah, that was weird. Like that guy came up, it wasn't he was like, oh my God, Mac Jones did this to me.
But walking away and giving the wince way after the fact, that's like not catching the foul ball and then looking at your glove like, oh jeez, what happened?
He's like, oh yeah,
that's an after the fact thing to me. I don't know. Something smells about it, but I at the end of the day, I think it was Andrew Callahan on TV yesterday said it's really easy to go through life and not grab people in the grapes.
It's true.
And I think ultimately that's probably where I land on it. But I think there's nuance to it.
It's your message for the day, message for the week. Easy to go on through life without grabbing people in the grapes. And I think that's a perfect place to end this podcast.
Don't grab the grapes.
Do not grab the grapes. I'm Zach Cox. This is Dakota Randall. You can follow me on X at Zach Cox NESN. You can follow Dakota at Dak Randall, and you can follow along with all of our Patriots coverage during the lead up to this weekend's road game in Dallas. First time at AT&T Stadium for both of us, I believe, so definitely pretty excited to check that out.
You're going to a TCU game.
I am going to a TCU game.
I'm going to go find a good steak.
I may have broken my ankle, so I might be hobbling around Central Texas. It's going to be interesting. If you see me, give me a ride or give me a Razor scooter or something. But it should be fun. Patriots Cowboys Sunday, 4:25 p.m. Stay tuned to NESN.com before, during, and after that game for full coverage.